RANADRILL weekly podcast.
So my question is the decarbonization of oil and gas sector will be enough to limit emissions as we still record high demand on coal?
Well, that is a very interesting question, and
Thank you.
I would like to highlight specifically the fact that, coming from a developing part of the world or the global south, as they say, it's important and interesting to have their perspective in the wider debate of around energy transitions and climate crisis, and specifically when we talk about the solutions. So oil and gas, all right, even if we some way, with a magic wand decarbonize the oil and gas sector, although I don't think it is quite possible, and I'll explain why. Even then, there are so many other things that still require, that will cause carbon emissions. For instance, there is this really good book by Vaslav Smil called How the World Really Works, and he explains four things: plastic, cement, ammonia, and one more thing. I'm forgetting it, but those four things are like the building block of civilization. Those four things are not a luxury or leisure. Those four things are, are required actually when you are witnessing an improve in living standards. And when you compare living standards between the developed world or the advanced economies and the developing world or the global south, we all know that there is still a lot to be done. When we talk about this part of the world, for instance, there is a need of 400 million homes to be built in Africa over the next decade or so. Even in Pakistan, we talk about the number of air conditioning units. You talk about the minimum wage. You talk about the income per capita. So all of these things, and hopefully, and I pray that things improve as the living standards of people improve. Carbon emissions follow naturally. The important point here to ask is that whether we have reached a point where there has been a decoupling between economic growth and energy emissions. Unfortunately, and I might be wrong, but so far I think we have not reached that point. Up until a certain point, there is a direct correlation between emissions and economic growth. So to answer coming back to your question, Shoaib, even if first of all, the idea of decarbonizing oil and gas comes with a lot of political economy, right? What about those people who are working there? What about countries like Pakistan who cannot? Look at the recent Energy Institute statistical review of the year report. It shows that still the global primary energy mix from fossil fuels still accounts for 81% of the share, despite all the talks, despite all the conferences, despite all the pledges. So if countries like Germany, if countries like US, if rich countries like China, other European countries, advanced economies, they have not been able to go completely green.
It's a political speech. It's not a
Yes.
real speech. This is the message, the speech of the politicians.
Yes, so that's the point. So what about this reality? If they have not been able to do it, how can you ask Pakistan? How can you ask Bangladesh? How can you ask countries in Africa, like, hey, stop using oil and gas, let's decarbonize it? What are we going to do about the alternatives? And we talk about the alternatives, I would like to highlight as well. There are inherent limitations to renewable energy systems, right? There is an issue of intermittency. There is an issue, the most important issue is scalability, whether renewable systems have reached a level they can power the whole country. Third, there is an issue of funding, then time and scale. So, it doesn't make sense. We have to, I've written a lot on this as well. We really have to reframe the whole narrative and rethink the whole problem. Only then we can reach the right conclusions. If we continue to think in the current framework, I think it's a lost cause then.
Osama, if you have some time for 3 minutes, I give you one question if you can. Okay, thank you very much. Osama, tell me, do you have, let's say, do we have reliable alternatives to fossils? Do you believe that we have these alternatives to fossils when talking about petrochemistry and some fertilizers?
As of today, Shoaib, once again, we do have alternatives like Dr. Thomas was talking about, hydrogen and all those things, the circularity of carbon and CCUS and direct air capture and all those things. But once again, when you look at the charts of, I mean, so there was a very interesting chart by the IEA in their net zero, in their highly ambitious and unrealistic net zero 2050 report, where there were three lines. One was going like this, straight up, which said that this is the amount of time we need an increase in the carbon capture and storage systems. Then there was this line in the middle, which showed the increase in carbon emissions. Then there was a straight line, and I read, what is that? That was the total carbon captured by the existing carbon capture system. So I mean, insignificant. There was a straight line, literally straight line. So the